Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pop Culture Challenge Season 4 Tier 1 Final Preview. We have Dave and Michael already with us. Joe will be joining us shortly. Unfortunately, we don't have Jonathan with us, but more than enough to talk about with the two guests we currently have and the third who will be hopefully arriving imminently. So don't forget, if you want to put some questions or comments in the chat, feel free to do so. We'll try and pick those up and pass those on to the contestants. But Dave, Michael, welcome and congratulations on making the Tier 1 final.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Dave, this is your third final.
Yeah.
So you're an old hand at this by now. 3 out of 4 tournaments. Runner-up in Season 1, third last time out. What have you learnt from your past finals?
I'm not sure whether I can really learn anything in terms of tactics. I mean, it comes down to what comes out of the, what sets come up, what questions come up, and then how they're divided into seats. Really, I learned that Ian Toms and Bob DeCo are pretty bloody good pop culture quizzes. So I'm quite pleased they're not around, but it's not going to be, obviously, it's not going to be an easy game. So
yeah, and another one who's not around is Lewis Jones, who has been pretty much ever present since the start. So it really is a change of guard in a way. We are going to have a new winner this time round. So we'll really look forward to seeing which of the four of you that is. Michael, you've been hanging around Tier 1 since pretty much day one, but I think this is your first final, isn't it?
First final. A few close misses, but the first time in the finals. Took a while, but we got there in the end.
What do you think the difference was this time round for you?
Well, questions must have fallen my way. I think the quarterfinals has always been a bit of a bad one for me. I've lost nearest the ball and I've lost by a point. And then I've looked at the semi-final questions and obviously I've played them in placement matches and I've done really well. So I don't know if I'm getting past my bogey week because that's opened it up maybe for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's you always need kind of a degree of fortune in any quiz, the questions to fall your way. It's I don't know. It's what sort of a season has it been for the two of you in terms of kind of enjoyability, questions, etc.? How's it felt, Dave?
The first 4 weeks, won all my matches, and it was going pretty swimmingly. Although the first game I played, there's a chap called Paul Lavery in the game in the match, and he was really good actually, and really a bit, and also Andrew Whittingham, and he was really good in one of the matches I played. But then I got to week 5 and just had an absolutely awful match. It was Matt Williams and Tom Mead were there, so they were both really good. And just like the subjects just didn't suit me at all. It's stuff like Robot Wars and Akira Kurosawa films and stuff like that. It's one of those matches where I actually got quite frustrated actually towards the end and ended up fourth place. And so I had to come second or first in my the week 6 match to get into Tier 1, and I just scraped in. I came second to Don Tate. He had a good match. But yes, it's been in terms of the subjects. There's been a few in there that's been quite favourable to me, like the CBeebies quad. I've got little kids, so that was it's quite good to be in a match with people without kids, and the NFL quad was good for me, and just generally like the what I call like the Generation X subject matter tends to sort of suit me quite well, and there was a fair chunk of that. So
yeah. Well, I mean that's great, and there is always going to be one game that kind of potentially trips you up. Welcome, Joe. Glad.
Hello. Good evening. Thank you.
Join us. Just I'll fire the same question to Michael whilst you kind of gather yourself, Joe.
That's
Michael,
right.
What sort of competition was it for you then thus far?
Well, first week obviously is the seeded week, but it was quite a tricky match. I think all my opponents seemed to get about 10 or out of 15 of their own, so it wasn't an easy match by any stretch. And yeah, second week was not a good one. Played Jonathan Gibson and Matt Williams and came third. So it was catch up for quite a few weeks. Fortunately, I won the next game, went really well. I got 14 out of 15 on my own and won that and won the next couple. So I only needed really top two definitely got me through, and third probably would. So
yeah,
after a bad start, it went quite well the rest of the season.
Yeah, brilliant. Joe, welcome. Glad you could join us and say
Thank you.
Is your first Pop Culture Challenge final.
It is, yes.
What was the difference for you this time round, do you think?
I'd love to say I have a definite answer, but I'm not sure I do really. My form in these tournaments in general seems to fluctuate quite a bit. I think I can't really pinpoint it. If I can't necessarily recall that many of my matches, unfortunately, from the last tournament. But I certainly feel like when I played it the first time, I was quite inconsistent with my form. I'd get like 12 home gets one week and only 7 the next. This time I seem to have been much more steady. I think I've been sort of at 10, 11, 12 every time.
Yeah, and consistency is really important as well when you need to be notching those first places and second place finishes.
Yeah, for definite.
Yeah. So for people who might not know you, Dave, we've interviewed before. Michael has been around the block a few times and has been on All Things Quiz a few times. But Joe, you're a newer prospect, certainly to All Things Quiz. But we know you've been on University Challenge, and we're really good on that. And we know you've been on Only Connect. So, is pop culture quizzing your first love, or are you a bit of an all-rounder?
I would, I'd say I'm fairly generalist. I guess I started off like a lot of people wanting to, watching University Challenge as like a lot of quizzes who started off at university. I started off watching University Challenge and wanting to go on it, and most of my quiz career has been at university level, and I did a lot of the buzzer quiz bowl events when I was at university, and I found I generally performed better, I guess, on quizzes either with a higher proportion of popular culture content or quizzes that were pop culture focused. And I guess that seems to have continued into these tournaments.
And Michael, we know you've had success on the national quiz circuit in terms of things like sport genre, entertainment, lifestyle. So you're very much a pop culture denizen.
Oh yeah, it's definitely my favorite. I've always I like history and a bit of geography, but yeah, sport, TV, films, they're my go-to things, definitely.
Yeah. Dave, you're really good on things like music, I think, and film and stuff. What's your kind of preferred part of the syllabus?
Yeah, I mean, just pop culture for sure. Sport, TV, music, sort of miscellaneous sort of lifestyle sort of stuff as well. Is quite sort of. I just seem to have remembered quite a lot of stuff from going back to quite early on. So it's definitely my favorite part of quizzing. And I do like Michael. I like a bit of history and geography and stuff like that. But it's my favorite area really.
Yeah. Now, Joe and Dave, you had a monstrous looking semi-final. You had Lewis Jones, the perennial finalist, and you had Evan Lynch, one of the best Mimir players that there is. Going into that, you must have thought, oh my God, what have I drawn, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, semi-finals, tier one, semi-finals. I know it sounds trite, but they're always going to be tough. So yeah, I mean, it's you just got to back yourself really, and hope that the luck's going to come your way really.
Yeah. And Joe, what did you think your prospects were when you were faced with two previous finalists in Lewis and Dave plus Evan Lynch?
Not great, to be honest. I've played against and lost against Evan an awful lot from my time on the university quiz circuit, so I'm very well aware of how kind of good an all-round player he is, and I don't know Lewis as well, but I know he has a very strong reputation as a very good pop culture quizzer. So I think I was probably fairly relaxed going into it because I didn't really have any expectations of doing well. I've kind of exceeded my expectations even qualifying for tier one. I didn't really think I'd achieve that at all. So I think I've been fairly relaxed, and that's probably helped me get a few questions I might not have recalled if I was more tense, maybe. But I wasn't expecting much, and I've played quite a few of Dave's music quizzes on WikiQuiz, so I know he probably covers a lot of areas of music which normally I might pick up against other players. I knew I was less likely to with Dave as well, so I thought that might lessen my chances, but luckily enough questions fell right that I was able to get through in second place.
Yeah. So that one, Dave, you got 14 out of 15, ended up on 17. Joe, you got 12 out of 15, and ended up on 14 with Lewis and Evan on 12. How did that game play out? Looking at it, it looks like, Dave, you were well clear, but we know that these things can ebb and flow. What was the nature of that match?
Just going to say, Gareth, I can't see or hear Joe at the moment, so I'm going to have to sort of give my account of it.
Sorry,
but is Joe talking yet?
No, Joe's still here, but no, you fire away, Dave.
That's cool, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound really cocky, but I managed to get ahead by sort of fairly mid game and sort of stay there. Really, so it went pretty well. I was hoping to clear up on the Britpop and the novelty singles, but Joe wasn't having any of it. So,
and Joe, how did it play out from your side of things in terms of was it a hard fought battle for you, or when did you kind of feel that you were going to get there?
Probably only in the last round. I think, like Dave said, he was kind of ahead pretty much all the way. I think it wasn't actually, if I remember rightly, it wasn't even until the last round that Dave lost his chance for a perfect game. So he was kind of solidly ahead all the way through, and I can't honestly recall that much of it, but I think I was kind of maybe 1 or 2 points ahead of Lewis and Evan for most of the games. Because I think Evan had a few tricky ones early on which put him behind, and he was never quite able to catch up. But I wouldn't say there was any certainty until right near the end, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it was a tight match, but clear water between you. Michael, you had Jonathan Gibson, Daniel O'Sullivan, and Anthony Smith in your semi-final. Obviously, we know Jonathan Gibson, youngest ever mastermind. I don't know too much about Daniel O'Sullivan or Anthony Smith, but they look pretty useful players based on what I can see from the scores.
Yeah, they were getting. I think I read one for Anthony earlier in the season, and I think he won that fairly comfortably. Yeah, so I knew going in he was a good player. I've never seen Dan, but his stats were very impressive. So yeah, I wasn't obviously. It was nice to avoid Dave and Evan and Lewis, but not taking anything for granted because Jonathan beat me week 2, so anything could happen.
And there is that thing that you sometimes, even between quarterfinal and finals, that there are some rematches that that crop up. So if you're only being asked 15 questions of your own, then a lot comes down to how the quads fall. Stats wise, I tried to pull together some stats, try and understand how things have gone. Let's see. So in terms, this is regular season before playoffs. In terms of total questions answered correctly, Michael and Dave, you're neck and neck. You're neck and neck on owns. Joe, you're not far behind on own questions. I think the big difference here, and I wonder if it's a tactical thing, is the bonus attempts. Joe, you don't seem to have gone for a huge amount of bonus attempts. Is that a very kind of you'll go for it when you know it thing? You don't risk it? What's your strategy there?
Yeah, I'd say I'm a fairly cautious player. I always was in buzzer quiz as well. I wouldn't really go for stuff unless I was pretty certain on the answer. So it may be a little bit of caution. And probably the ones I got wrong were where I was either miles ahead or miles behind and didn't have so much to lose kind of thing. I think maybe due to the players I've been playing against, I'm not sure. All the matches I've been playing have been quite close, and I don't remember any matches. I feel like most of the matches I've been playing in, most of the players were getting sort of 9 or 10 plus in most of the games, so I haven't had that many opportunities to dominate a quad or anything in any of the games that I recall. So there may be something to do with that as well. But I would say I maybe need to be a little bit more attacking looking at those stats.
Well, I mean, you can only play with the questions that are in front of you, but it is interesting that you say Michael and Dave. There looks like a cigarette paper between the two of you. I mean, there's very, very little in it. Clearly, a similar sort of strategy, going for a little bit more, but looking at that conversion rate, still not being kind of reckless, Michael.
Yeah, I tend to not throw out too random a guess or anything. I don't have to wait till I'm 100% sure, but certainly early on in a game, I want to be very, very confident, and then maybe towards the end, where I'm at the end of the queue and no one's ever going to overtake me in the queue, or I've got a few bonus spares until I catch up with somebody else, then I start throwing a few more guesses out, maybe.
Yeah, same here. Really. I mean, mathematically, you have to wait till the second round for the quads to sort of make themselves known. So I try and hold back a bit in the first round, I think, for that reason. And same with Michael. Really, I tend to. I think the biggest fear in Mimir is to make a silly guess, and then that puts you permanently at the back of the queue when there's some juicy bonuses to get your teeth into. So, yeah.
Yeah, very, very true. We've got some stats here on actual subjects. And this is the first set. Film, Jonathan Gibson looks strong. Michael, you can second there. TV, Dave, you're in there with Michael second. Jonathan's strongest on music, and then Joe's second on music, although there's not a huge amount between you on that.
So this is heard questions, isn't it? So it's how many you've heard.
Yes, right? Yeah, heard questions. So there is a little bit of variation in how many each heard. So yes, that's true. Yeah. Sport-wise, Michael, you're ahead. But obviously, we don't know what's going to come up. And sport can be, it could be MMA and wrestling, Michael. In which case,
oh, please not.
Hard quads on them, not none of us straightforward stuff.
But the thing is, obviously, with memory that I want to mention also as well is that, especially with the way this tournament's going, the questions are put together. It's obviously a lot of the quads are ascending, so you get. It depends on what seat you're in, whether it's going to be something that's sort of, you ultimately want the hardest one in the quad for the subject that you like, or that perhaps better than the others. So it's like it really does come down to that sometimes a bit.
Yeah. Joe, you've got a good hit rate looking at film there. Is that a good subject for you across the board?
Yeah, I would say so. I think. Certainly with the sport and the music and possibly with film, I have sort of areas within those categories that I'm very strong at, but equally some areas that I'm very weak at. So certain music categories, or if the sport's cricket, I'll probably do very well, but some other categories I'm not so strong at. So I have kind of strengths and weaknesses in those areas. Whereas film, I'd say I'm probably a bit more solid across the board. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the rest of the subjects. Video games, Michael. Quite a strong, healthy-looking lead there for you. Lifestyle, Dave. That goes down to that generalist kind of thing you were talking about. That general kind of life stuff. Nothing between Michael and Jonathan on musicals, literature, and games, which doesn't look like the most asked about section, but nonetheless, nothing there. And free choice, Dave, 100% on that. Now, I assume that's just kind of the AN other category.
Yeah. I don't know what. That's strange, isn't it? I'd like to be interested to see what they are actually.
Yeah. Well, no idea. It could be anything.
It could be anything. In terms of Joe looking at this, literature, musical literature games, that's a bit of a catch-all, but that 60% is pretty strong for a fairly ill-defined category. So do you think you've got a kind of a broad base in those sorts of areas?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know. I think what this probably shows more than anything is that I kind of know little bits about lots of different areas rather than necessarily being a dominant player in one particular category. And I don't seem to be necessarily dominant compared to my three fellow finalists in any particular areas, but kind of doing okay across the board, I guess.
Yeah, I think that it's a fairly solid representation for you. That's for sure. Michael, video games. I wouldn't have put you down as being a video game specialist. Is this something you've been working at?
I quite like computer games. I don't get the really, really hard ones, or like the modern indie games. I'm struggling on, but your classic games, certainly ones I played when I was young, I'm all over them. And even like popular games now, like Assassin's Creed, that kind of thing. I'll still play it, not regularly, but I'll still play it, so I know enough about it to do all right in quizzing. And we don't have, well, fingers crossed this isn't going to happen, but I don't think we've had that many quads where it's been really difficult computer game questions. So we'll get it this week, obviously.
Hopefully not, yeah. Hope for some, sorry, just thinking back to the stuff that was in the arcades in the early 90s, that suit me.
Yeah, that's right on my street. Yeah, just what I played before I was about 16. That's still in there. It's never left.
Exactly.
I mean, there are. I'll take this off for now. There is an element of a lot of stuff in the popular culture canon being kind of generational. Certain TV programs. If you're a couple of years too young or too old, you might just have no awareness of it. Same with music, same with a lot of these things. Joe and Jonathan being kind of on the younger end of the spectrum, Dave and Michael being the more slightly older. You're not old, but there is kind of a gap there. There is the potential for quads that will favour one pair or the other pair potentially. Joe, as kind of the younger end of the spectrum, how do you feel you've coped with like kind of the slightly older stuff that's come through? Do you feel that's easier for you to kind of get a grip of than perhaps somebody older getting a grip of more modern stuff?
Not necessarily, but I think, I don't know, I'm probably fairly atypical in the sort of quizzes my age, in that I tend to get more, certainly in terms of popular music and things, more content of older generations than my own. So I don't think necessarily it's easier for me to know that stuff than it is for the reverse position. But I picked up from stuff I've watched and listened to that my parents have introduced me to. I picked up a reasonable amount of older music and television and cinema, so I don't necessarily feel that concerned or worried about content from a previous era. I guess some of the more niche stuff obviously does elude me, but it's not something that concerns me too much on the whole, actually.
No, well, that's a really good position to be in. I mean, some things are just very generational. Chris Dyson's put this in the chat. Kids just don't know Hungry Horace. Very sad. Computer game from very early 80s, I imagine.
Spectrum, yeah. And Horace Goes Skiing.
Horace Goes Skiing, indeed. Oh, if that comes up, imagine we
just... it will now. It's
just revealed.
Guaranteed to come up.
But that is a really good example of something that is quite generational. It's machine specific and a particular kind of 3 or 4 year window in the early 80s. So that sort of stuff can happen. But the converse, and we talked about this in the last preview, the way that I certainly think pop culture is arguably more difficult to master than the high culture stuff, because Beethoven's not going to be writing any more symphonies, but pop music doesn't rest. Football and sport doesn't rest. You keep getting results, keep getting things. And to master pop culture, you've got to be on top of everything that's happening now. Dave, do you kind of consciously try and keep on top of all the new stuff that's coming through?
Not strictly for quizzing, really. I don't think. Maybe I do subconsciously, but I'm just a really sort of big consumer of it all, really. Big sports fan and played it quite a lot. A number of sports. Grew up as a big sports fan, and it's just like something that naturally is something that I do, really. I think you have to in pop culture. I think you have to be an active consumer of the various bits to be good at it. I think I don't think it's something that you necessarily can sort of pick up by just doing a cursory glance at what's out and all that kind of thing.
Having an affinity is really important. And Michael, you've been kind of at the top of sort of UK pop culture quizzing for quite some time. How do you work at it? Do you try and deal with subjects and things that aren't really the things you have a natural affinity with, just to make sure you keep up with the Joneses?
Yeah, a bit of that. Yeah, obviously it's mainly the same as Dave, but just a big consumer of it. Obviously, I watch pretty much every well, when I was growing up, I watched every sport. It's a little bit less now, but it's still a lot of sport.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
and a lot of TV and a lot of I've got a City World card, so I go to the cinema all the time. But it's all working in an office. You overhear people talking about things, so I absorb it that way. If you see certain things are trending, I might not have no interest in watching them, but I'll maybe read the Wikipedia page on it just so I can see it and maybe get a bit of a synopsis of the plot, something like that. So if I hear something's popular, maybe look it up and have a little read about it. But
I think it's also sorry, but just saying it's also sort of doing quizzes really helps. And
I do a lot of pub quizzes. So,
exactly. Doing sport quizzes, which I quite like doing, and just and writing quizzes as well. I do write a few quizzes here and there. So that really helps.
Yeah.
Joe, if thinking back over the tournament, and the rest of you could be thinking on this question as well, were there any quads that you particularly liked, enjoyed, or did particularly well on that stick in the memory?
I've got three Musketeers in the season, so that's helped. One in the semis, which was I couldn't have predicted that was the hockey one, so that suited me. And then I got Musketeer on the Sylvester Stallone Razzie films, which is very much in my wheelhouse, and one on Greyhound racing. And but the one I liked the most, the quad I liked the most was a Eurovision one, which benefited people who actually watch it, haven't just learned a list of who's won it. So that I think because other people were getting them, so I didn't get the Musketeer, but I thought that was a really well well written quad.
Nice. Joe, how about you?
I've been trying to think back. I'm drawing a complete blank. I'm sorry. My memories for these games just kind of seem to disappear as rapidly as they happen. I remember there was a cricket quad in the quarterfinal, which I liked, which was a nice kind of ascending difficulty. I think it was in the quarterfinal. It was the one on like highest ranking players, but I think that just sticks in my mind because I didn't get the musketeer on it because I think someone else got one of the questions, but that was quite a successful one for me. I don't think I've had a musketeer this year unless I've forgotten one. The best new information I think I've learned from a question was learning that the shape of the Fab Ice Lolly was modelled on the Thunderbirds. That was a good piece of information that I enjoyed.
It's great to learn stuff like that. I mean, I haven't played this series, so that's a new one for me as well. So I enjoyed that. Dave, how about you?
What sort of best sort of quads?
Yeah,
quads that I liked. The Greyhound racing one was quite good actually because it just really quite bizarrely suited me because Ballyregan Bob was a local star in Brighton for about a year growing up. So it was in the paper all the time, and also. I used to go to the Wimbledon Dogs with my rugby club quite a lot, so that was quite handy. So I like the fact I don't think I've ever done a quad that focused on greyhound racing before, so that was pretty cool. Some of the quite creative quads, like stuff that's quad about people that are buried at Highgate Cemetery, stuff like that. It was just sort of quite a random little hook to get a quad on. I thought that was really interesting, and I like the Lucy Reynolds. I think she did it. It was the quad on. You see, I haven't. I can't hear Joe, so maybe he's saying this, but the goalkeeper injuries quad.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was really quite fun. Luckily, all the goalkeepers survived their injuries, so that's okay.
Oh,
and
yeah, that
it was. I actually saw Dave Besant in a local cafe recently, so I had to say hello to him, but didn't mention the salad cream.
No, salad cream bottle on the toe. Yeah. I mean, there's some nice ones. Did that one have Chick Brody being attacked by a dog? Because that
No.
It had Alex Stepney breaking his jaw.
Yeah, it was
one of the questions.
I think it was Dave Besant and Canizares and Stepney. Stepney was subbed in for
Mark Poom got knocked out. Yeah, he had a very tender injury, I think, Mark Poom.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and what was the other one? I can't remember.
Well, I mean that sounds like a great quad. I mean, I have to say, I haven't played this series or this season, but I have read a number of the quizzes, kind of just for enjoyment. I think it doesn't perhaps get said often enough, but there's been some. I'll say it again. It doesn't get said often enough, but there has been some fantastic writing, I think.
Yeah.
This series, and it's not an easy job to do a Mimir, to balance it nicely and to get the ascending quads right, or the balance within a quad. So I think well done to the setters. And I think
I think that it's a really difficult job, and I think that I mean the standard is so good. I think standard of writing is so good that we can nitpick a bit, but I think it's really good.
We'll nitpick because we're quizzers, and that's what we do. But but no,
think about the 1 or 2 bad questions, not the 88.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good ones,
Yeah, no, that definitely happens. So we've talked about quads that you've liked. Were there any bad misses? I tend to find I don't remember the questions I get right. I remember the ones I get wrong, and they're the ones that haunt me. Dave, were there any that kind of live long in your memory for that reason?
Actually, not this time. I mean, there was. I remember a couple of seasons back. I guessed. I said 10 years a slave for 12 years a slave, and that I always remember that. But this season, it was more like I knew it or I didn't really. I managed to pluck a few from the recesses of the memory, but I didn't get any. I tend to use the old quick pass quite a lot anyway. So sometimes,
good tactic. Good tactic, quick pass.
Yeah. Nothing that I'm really sort of annoyed about.
Okay, Michael, anything for you?
Yeah, there's a couple I've got. And one I was really proud of. It was the Violet Berlin TV show. I think I've got this one, and I was thinking I said Bits, which ends up being a Channel 4 show starring Emily Booth. Not the fact that was Bad Influence.
Yeah.
I'd be really proud. I've got it. I didn't.
Yeah, Dom Tate got that one. He's it was amazing when he got that one. Yeah.
The other one, I spent 29 seconds thinking of. There was a film starring Timothy Chalamet. I think I've got it again, and I said, "Call me by my name," but it's "Call me by your name."
Wow.
That's frustrating when it happens.
Yeah, no, I think when I was playing last season, I think I said the man who killed Liberty Valance, just because it was like I knew the film immediately, but didn't take that second to just think. There you go, it happens. Joe, anything that sticks in your memory for the wrong reasons?
No, not particularly. Actually, I think similar to Dave. I'm not necessarily one who spends like 30 seconds trying to dredge the answer out if I don't think I'm going to know it. But I guess I had a rare moment in my quarterfinal of wishing I knew more about NFL, because that was the one question of my own I didn't get. But it was the NFL question I had. But otherwise, a couple of frustrating ones where I've like known the other three in a quad, but not my own one. But that I can't think of that many where I or any really where I thought of that I should have. I should have got it.
Okay.
Sorry. That's right.
That's fine.
I thought of one more agonising one.
Oh, go on, Michael. Yeah.
When I got the week, I got 14 out of 15. As the one I was missed was on the store cards, and I've only ever heard a boots called a boots card before. They're like the level 1 questions, and I would have known the other 3, but I've never heard a boots card called anything else. So unfortunately, that was the one that was in my seat. So that's why I missed out on a 15, is not knowing what a boots card's proper name was.
Well, thankfully, it didn't cost you a place in the final. Now, the final is, I believe, on Sunday, and the questions will all have been written and verified and checked, etc. So you can't influence them now, even if you wanted to. So I won't ask you about tactics. We did talk a little bit about kind of bonus tactics, and we've heard about the quick pass, etc. But if you could write a quad that would suit you and perhaps scupper others, what would that quad be, Michael?
The obvious one. As hard a wrestling quad as I can get away with.
Yeah. And I mean, somebody somewhere has just won the sweepstake on that answer.
Yeah, it's always the obvious answer.
But you're known for that. You're known for your love of kind of MMA and wrestling, etc. What about something that might surprise people, Michael? Is there something that people might think, actually, I wouldn't have known he would love that?
Well, for the computer game ones, we still awaiting the long-awaited Commodore 64 Amiga board.
Yes.
4 seasons in, we have one of them. Viz characters is something I'd like to see. We've never had a Viz character question in any season, so that would be nice to see.
Okay. I think Joe's having an issue at the moment, by the look of it.
And people from the Northeast as well. Sportsmen from the Northeast. There we go.
Excellent. Good choice. Joe, are you still with us? I think Joe's doing a setting. Are you still with us, Joe? Oh,
he's disappeared.
He has disappeared this time. Dave, how about you then? What would be your dream quad?
I think a hard rugby union quad, probably. Just my sport. Oh, I can actually see Joe finally now as well.
Yeah,
Hi, Joe.
You're back with us, Joe. Yeah. Hard rugby union. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, right. Joe, can you hear us now?
Yeah, no, I'm back. Sorry, I had a bit of a sound failure.
Right. We could hear something was going on. So if you had a dream quad that you think you could do well on and others wouldn't, what would it be?
I something about sort of slightly more obscure progressive rock groups. So like away from your kind of bog standard Yes and Genesis, and more towards like Van der Graaf Generator level. So probably never would come up. Or the Fall. Anything on the Fall, I feel like I would be confident on.
Excellent.
Doing very well on that.
And that's kind of subverting what people's expectations of you might be. But of course, your Twitter bio gives a little hint of those things as well. Very, very, very well rounded. The lot of you actually, you've done fantastically well to get to the Tier 1 final. We saw the stats earlier. Big hitting, good answer percentages, really stupendously good. All that really remains for me to say is best of luck for the final.
Thank you.
Hope your dream come up, and I hope you all come away from it. Only one of you can win, but I hope you come away from it feeling you've done yourself justice at the end of it. So best of luck to Dave, to Michael, and to Joe, and thank you so much for coming on today.
And Jonathan as well.
Thanks a lot.
Jonathan, indeed.
And Jonathan. Good luck, everyone.
Good luck, everyone.
To anybody who's watching, they will be putting the video putting video out presumably on Sunday evening, but I'm sure there'll be a post about that. And on All Things Quiz, we'll be back on Tuesday for Quizzy Monday on Tuesday to cover University Challenge and Only Connect. So look out for that. And until we see you again, good quizzing, best of luck to the finalists, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.